Morning, Bengaluru. Namaskara. I'll take not more than 10 minutes, max 15 minutes to tell you 4 stories today. It was a lovely conversation. I picked up compliance, regulatory, sustainability, leading to trust, and my stories are related to that. So before I tell those 4 stories, I also want to share with you uh, where we come from, what Zscaler is all about, and then continue to give you those relevant 4 stories for you to take. The 4 stories are conversation openers. Obviously, in 10-15 minutes, there's so little that I can share, so that it leads us to have conversations over the next 5-6 hours. Zscaler has a core mission. Our core mission is to simplify, transform business, but fundamentally also make you secure, which leads to sustainability, making sure that you're compliant to regulatory requirements, and build trust for your customers. So how do we do this? We've been doing for the last 14 years. Our fundamental reason is to simplify. What do we mean by simplify? We built networks for the last 30 years to allow users, be it consumers, be it customers, connect to a workload or a destination. We help simplify that. While we simplify that, we help you reduce the cost to run your operation, making it more sustainable. The second thing that we do is transformation. What do we mean by transformation is we move you from a place of operations that you have today to where it is sustainable in the long run and bringing in profitability. The areas that we have delivered value to customers is, I want to take the example of Siemens. Siemens had close to 360 sites across the globe, extremely complicated network to run their operations. This is way back in 2014. In the last, from 2014 to 2018, we transformed their network to simplify, reducing their cost of infrastructure, cost of operations by over 70%. The second use case that I want to use here is S&P Global, but something more local is HDFC Bank. HDFC Bank and HDFC Limited merged. We were able to transform HDFC's business here in India by allowing the M&A to happen, which is, imagine HDFC branch had 7,000 branches needing access to limited applications or services, and vice versa, which is limited branch getting access to all the services that the bank needed. What we are very proud of to call is our NPS is 70 plus. The reason why we have great customer satisfaction is because we drive value. We are extremely focused in driving value. And because we drive value and simplify, we bring in security, which I'll talk in the 4 stories over the next few minutes. What do we bring to the table? So there are many stories that I can share, but given the limited time, I'll broadly give you a very high-level view and then get into those 4 areas. The 4 areas that we impact is how do we simplify users connecting to a destination? The destination could be internet, or destination could be a private application. Why do users need access to these destinations? Is to deliver a service for your enterprise. This has been done over the last 30 years by building complex networks. And we help you reduce the tech debt, because of which we make you profitable and make you sustainable. I'm going to speak, the 4 stories are predominantly around the workload today, because a lot of you come from the fintech world. This is an area that we are evolving, and I'll share with you the stories around the workload space, which means that you have a hybrid environment. In the hybrid space, how can we simplify your architecture? It might not be extremely relevant for today's conversation, but we also impact organizations that have OT and IoT space. If you have OT and IoT devices that are headless, that need access to core application, we help it make it simple and secure. I'm not going to speak too much on this, but if you have any use cases around the OT IoT space, happy to have a conversation on the sidelines. And the last piece is of interest to the team here, which is around how do you simplify secure connectivity or access to your B2B. It could be suppliers. I'm sure a lot of fintechs and the gig world that's happening, or the gig economy that we're going to talk over the next 10 years, will have a substantial amount of users who are going to come from come from outside your environment, which is suppliers and contractors, plus how do you secure B2C access, which is how can consumers connect to your environment safe and secure, building trust and easing your growth. So these are the 4 areas that we play in. Happy to share a lot more over the next 5-6 hours. But today I'm going to deep dive 4 stories specific on workload and consumers. The first story on workload. Um, all of you have hybrid environment. It could be an environment that could be in one of the 3 big clouds. It could be AWS, Azure, or GCP. These workloads from time to time need to connect to the internet. And now when they connect to the internet, you need to make sure that nothing good leaves the enterprise, which is around data. I hope I'm making sense, which means that the data that you have, which could be related to consumers, which could be related to financial transactions that are in these workloads, have to be transacted for executing some of the services within the organization. How do you safely and securely connect to the internet is the first use case that we solve. The solution that we solve is for making sure that data doesn't leak, and we also make sure that nothing bad from the internet leaks into your enterprise. This is one simple use case that we solve. How do you solve this today? Is by building landing zones and firewalls, complicating the architecture. We simplify this first use case. The second use case that we solve is while workloads need to talk to the internet, they also need to talk in a hybrid environment, which is workloads in multiple clouds talking either to your data center or multiple workloads talking across different regions within the same service provider. Now, when they talk, the thing that we help is we darken your cloud. We bring in the power of invisibility, which is we become your depth in defense. We come in the forefront of your workload execution, making sure the transaction or the traffic that moves between workloads is secure. We do, first step is we eliminate lateral movement. The second thing that we reduce is the attack surface. This is the second use case that we solve. We can deep dive on each of this, which is how do we help this entire architecture that is built, because most of you here in this room are born in the cloud organization, and as you're born in the cloud organizations, you will continue to grow organically and inorganically. And as you grow, how do you build a sustainable long-term architecture for your own enterprise is an area that we can talk about. The third story is around data protection, which is basically around protecting data, which is the most important thing. If you fast forward maybe in the next 2-3 years, as and when DPDP comes in, with the regulatory requirements that are coming in, this becomes super important, because if you look at what's happened in the last 5 years is banks were highly regulated, NBFCs are getting regulated by the regulator, and fintechs are getting regulated to make sure that the world of operations becomes sustainable. The sustainability is because to make sure that trust is maintained. Why is this important for each of you in this room is because one of the things all of you handle or your organizations handle is PII data. And data is super important. Now, for you to deliver value or drive profitability, the data within your organization is extended and distributed to make sure it drives value. I'll give you an example. What do I mean by it? If you heard recent news of data breaches that have happened in the US on a third-party platform, on our data warehousing platform, that happened because the data from your organization has to get extended beyond the perimeter or the walls of your organization. When the data leaks, or not when the data leaks, when the data moves from your organizations to other clouds, how do you make sure the access, which is basically, can I discover the data? Once I discover the data, can I classify the data? Once I classify the data, When it moves, I follow the policies of that organization into the third-party cloud. Next is how do I make sure that the access to the data is also following the policies that you have defined, making sure that you're compliant and making sure that the data is secure. Is the third story that I wanted to share, which makes sure that your PII data is safe and secure as it gets distributed as you grow and grow your organization. The last story that I want to share is we're moving from just being B2B towards B2C. Each of the fintechs that are here have consumers that have got their mobile devices on which you don't have control on. How can we help you get entrenched into the SDK by building the connectivity of the consumer back into the core application? What are the use cases that we solve? We solve the issues of man in the middle and jailbroken environments that you have to work with. By doing this, we also bring in one more sustainable functionality, which is basically we make your cloud dark, which is we bring in the power of invisibility. When your consumers connect to this world, it will reduce the cost of operations, which means that for you to allow your users to connect to these environments, you have to build landing zones, you have to build DDoS, you have to build many technology stack that makes it expensive and cost prohibitive. What we do is by bringing this use case, we reduce the cost of operations and also simplify connectivity of your users back into this core application. This also leads into agility. So what I thought was, given that I had 10 minutes to quickly give you these 4 stories, so that over the next few hours, as we meet on the sidelines, we would love to elaborate on all of these 4 stories and see how it is relevant to each of you in this room. With that, I would love to say thank you. Thank you for hearing me out, and would love to speak to you with just across the room, and would love to speak to you on the stories that might be applicable for your use cases. Thank you.